Yo, survivors of the fantasy football apocalypse. This is Citizen Z broadcasting live from the gridiron wasteland. In dynasty leagues, your rosters gotta be lean, mean, and ready to fight off the zombie horde of bad decisions. Today, we're talking about players you can cut loose. Those dead weight dudes who ain't pulling their weight in your post-apocalyptic lineup. First up, the aging veterans. You know the type. Guys like 35-year-old running backs who still got name value but move slower than a walker in quicksand. Their production's dried up, and those rookie backups are chomping at the bit. Drop them. Next, the perennial breakout candidates who never break out. That wide receiver you've been stashing for 3 seasons, waiting for a big year. Yeah, if he's still riding the pine with no targets, it's time to throw him into the void. Potential. Don't score points. And don't sleep on those injured players with no clear comeback trail. If your former stud's got a knee that looks like it lost a fight with a lawnmower and no return date in sight, cut the cord on guys like Tyrod Taylor, arthroscopic knee surgery, out rest of the preseason. Look for the Jets to get another signal caller. And Calvin Austin III. He's injured and has legal problems. He has a trial. That's the day after the first game. He's a pup candidate. And this makes room for Roman Wilson, wide receiver 2, and increases value to the Pittsburgh tight ends. Brevin Jordan, lower body injury, and now on season-ending IR. Cut the cord. Alexander Madison, season-ending neck injury. He might as well have been decapitated. This guy is not going to make your roster. Roster spots are like ammo. Don't waste them. Finally, keep an eye on team dynamics. That shiny third stringer you drafted. If his team just signed a veteran or drafted a hotshot rookie, his path to touches just got blocked harder than a bunker door. Let him go and scavenge for someone with a pulse. Stay sharp out there, managers. Drop the dead weight and keep your roster ready for the long haul. This is Citizen Z signing off. Stay alive and keep drafting. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Healers program. This is your host, Dustin Brown. Thank you, Citizen Z, for that great announcement. Now we're going to bring you back to the Football Healers. We're going to go over the NFC division and see who we can make cuts on. We are going to use Player Profiler to look up the teams and the depth charts, just like we did for the AFC. Today we're going through the NFC. As you can see, it's labeled here. If you scroll all the way up for the depth charts, you can get through the AFC like we just did just a couple weeks ago. And now we're going to be going through the NFC. First team up is going to be the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys, they made some changes in this offseason. They brought in Pickens. Pickens is going to provide some much-needed depth at the wide receiver position for the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb, Pickens, they're going to have to throw the ball quite a bit because the running back situation is looking pretty bleak. As far as running backs go, if you have to make those tough cuts, as I may be doing here in the next couple weeks, Miles Sanders has been injured but is now ready to come back. He's on that 50%. Like, do you need him or don't you need him? But you can probably end up cutting him. It sounds like they're going to be trying to start out and trot out Javonte Williams as their running back 1. There's a lot of news about Jaden Blue basically being a slug, not being that present in regards to practices. But Miles Sanders, he still has potential with this Cowboys offense. If you need the depth, try and hold him. And if you need to make a cut, he's probably a cut candidate. As far as the quarterbacks go, the only quarterback that you want is Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott is a quarterback that is probably going to be a top 10 QB this year, as the Cowboys are going to be forced to throw on the ball. With their wide receivers quickly, you'll probably see on the waivers. And if you're still holding on to Jalen Tolbert, he's probably droppable. Turpin is droppable. Mingo droppable. Ryan Flournoy, I've already dropped him. Jalen Brooks, if he's still lingering on your roster, you may cut him. And the corpse that is Paris Campbell can be dropped. At the tight end position, you got Jake Turd Ferguson. He has just been paid quite a bit. PFF has them in the top 10 at the tight end position, while Colton and I have him outside the 15. Luke Schoonmaker, he made a little bit of noise when Jake Ferguson was injured. Again, with the uptick in the receiving weapons, Jake Ferguson, you should have less expectations for this tight end, as now Pickens is in town. And I can see that being a very low consolidation between CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. Quickly moving on to the Giants. The Giants have a slew of quarterbacks: Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart. If you watch the preseason game 1, they actually had Dart ahead of Jameis Winston at the quarterback position. Winston can be dropped in leagues if you have to make that tough cut. Even in Superflex leagues, I've had to make the cut already in one of my leagues. I'm holding on to him in another. If you can hold on to him when he gets a chance to play, he's definitely a quarterback that can score some points, as he likes to sling the ball. Jackson Dart, he looks like he's maybe getting more opportunities quicker than what we had expected, which means that Russell Wilson may have a shorter leash. The Giants do have one of the toughest schedules in the NFL, and that could lead to Russell Wilson just taking the bullets those first few games, as Jackson Dart might be starting as early as midseason. At the running back position, it's basically just Tracy and Scadaboo. Scadaboo's been injured a bit. You still want to hold on to him. Devin Singletary, the corpse that is Devin Singletary, he's definitely a droppable player, as there's really no upside with him. Tyrone Tracy and Scadaboo are the only running backs that you want on this roster. And as far as wide receivers go, there's Neighbors, Darius Slayton. If you absolutely need to scrape the barrel, I guess you can hold on to him, but don't fear if you need to drop him. He'll probably be available on waivers. Wan'Dale Robinson, he had a lot of targets last year, but it was low calorie as far as the targets go, because he'd get the targets, but he'd be catching the ball within just a few yards from line of scrimmage. But the Giants, again, they're going to have to throw the ball quite a bit. It could lead to some fantasy volume for Wan'Dale Robinson. If you can trade him, go for it. He just doesn't have a lot of name cachet. Jalen Hyatt, he should be on everybody's waiver wire. He's droppable. Pascal's droppable. Little Jordan Humphrey, he's made his rounds, but he's also droppable. At the tight end position, they generally don't have a tight end with the Giants, but Theo Johnson was that tight end that was drafted early in 2024. He got injured, and then there was no tight end of consequence. They did bring in Greg Dulcich last year from the Denver Broncos, but Greg hasn't done anything with his organization. Look for Theo Johnson to lead the way at the tight ends. With Greg Dulcich is probably, although he's listed as number 4, he's probably the most upside at the back end position for the tight ends for the Giants over Daniel Bellinger, who's been on this roster for about 4 years, hasn't provided any fantasy value. They do have a rookie in Thomas Fedone, but again, he wasn't playing until very late in the first preseason game. Fedone, I don't expect to provide any fantasy value for the year 2025. The Philadelphia Eagles got Jalen Hurts. He's going to sling the ball a lot more than what he did last year. Last year, he had like 300 and some odd attempts, which is very low. They didn't have to throw the ball quite as much because they had an easy schedule, one of the easiest schedules in the NFL, and they had Saquon Barkley to carry the load. This year, they have one of the toughest schedules in the league, so Jalen Hurts is going to be forced to throw quite a bit more. Tanner McKee had a very good preseason game. He's a guy that I've had on my radar for some time. I did see him picked up in 1 or 2 leagues in Superflex, and so if you're really needing that back-end quarterback that could make a little bit of noise if there was an injury, which Jalen Hurts always tends to get injured at the end of the season, Tanner McKee might just be that guy you may want to just pick up on the waivers on the cheap, 0 bid. Kyle McCord, he was a Syracuse quarterback, and he had a little bit of upside coming out. But again, he was a late 6th-round pick, 6'3", 218 pounds, not that athletic, has Kenny Pickett profile. He's a guy that you can keep and remain on the waiver wire. The running backs, the only running backs that you want from this team is Barkley and Will Shipley as the high-end upside backup running back. But that being said, he's not going to provide you any fantasy points unless there is a Barkley injury. A.J. Dillon, move him if you have him, but he is also a droppable candidate. The wide receivers, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, are the only two wide receivers on this team that you should have on your roster. If somehow the former first-round pick, Jahan Dotson, is still on your roster, you can cut him. Johnny Wilson, there were some people that picked him up last year. He's droppable. Anaya Smith, rookie this year. It does say stretch on there. That's all he is. He's just a stretch play guy. He might get that one long ball touchdown, but you never know when that is. So especially in lineup leagues, you do not want to have this guy on your roster. Terrence Marshall, he was a higher caliber pick when he was with the Panthers, but he has done nothing yet in the league. Droppable player. At the tight end position, there's Dallas Goedert and not a whole lot else. When Dallas Goedert was injured, the other tight ends really didn't do much. I thought that Grant Calaterra, I thought he was going to do something. He did not. An interesting name to keep an eye on will be actually Kylan Granson. He was a former Colts player. He had a lot of hype. It seemed like every camp season. I didn't realize that he was on this roster, but Dallas Goedert can't stay healthy. And Kellen Granson is a new tight end on this roster that potentially could provide some fantasy value. Just a name to know, not a guy that you need to roster at this time. And another guy I like to kind of keep tabs on is Harrison Bryant, because he's shown a little bit of flashes when he had opportunities to play while he was with the Browns. But again, those guys shouldn't be on your rosters. They're just guys to kind of put a star by, just check in later if there is a potential injury at all to Goddard. With Washington, Jaden Daniels has miraculously turned this franchise around. He played phenomenally, but they don't have anything behind him at the quarterback position. Marcus Mariota, he's not a guy even in Superflex that I want. He has shown no upside at all. Josh Johnson hasn't shown much, and neither has Sam Hartman outside of his hair. His hair is spectacular. Running backs, you've got Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, also known as Bill. Bill Nye, the science guy. Those are the guys that have some opportunities. I especially like Bill over all of these guys as far as the upside goes. Austin Eckler is starting to take a back seat. Jeremy McNichols is a fantastic running back. He's starting to age. I can see Bill actually pushing forward, and there's also some of the beat reporters saying that he could be the RB1 for this team. So the main guys that I really want are probably Brian Robinson and Bill. I'm in some leagues that you have to play at least 3 running backs, and so Jeremy McNichols is a guy to keep an eye on if he's starting to show some potential in this preseason. Maybe he's a guy just to kind of see if he can be a back-end roster guy. You want guys on good teams, and the Washington Commanders seem to be one of those good teams, especially now that the wide receivers are still kind of murky. Terry McLaurin wants a contract. They haven't given him a contract yet. He's holding in. Deebo Samuel, he has an injured finger. He's showing to be healthier. He's making a connection with Daniels. But outside of him, there's really no other wide receivers that you have to be really worried about. Noah Brown, I think he had a significant injury earlier in the offseason. I don't know if he's even available right now. Luke McCaffrey, he's not his brother, and he has not stepped up to the plate. Jalen Lane I like, but he's more of a special teams guy. KJ Osborne was the wide receiver 3 for the Vikings just a couple seasons ago. I liked him, but I really don't see him filling much of a need here for the Washington Commanders. In fact, they even brought in the corpse that is Michael Gallup. He came out of retirement. A guy that is making noise, though, for the Washington Commanders, and you got to scroll way down because they've got a lot of guys here on their team at the wide receiver spot. But Ja'Cory Brooks. Ja'Cory Brooks is a guy to just watch out on. He was an undrafted guy this year, 6'2", 184 pounds. He can really get up and make contested catches. He is an older prospect out of Louisville, but he was the guy that was catching all the balls just from show this past year. So Corey Brooks is a name to know. He's a guy that I'm stashing in one of my 5 dynasty leagues. But as far as the other guys, like, okay, Noah Brown, you probably don't have on your roster. Luke McCaffrey, if I had to make a cut, I wouldn't hesitate to cut him. Cutting KJ Osborne, I would not have Jalen Lane on my roster at this time, even though I do love the player. I hope he has a great opportunity, and I hope he's a successful player. But he's more of a special team guy, and I don't get a lot of points for special teams touchdowns or special teams plays. So those are all guys that are cuts. At the tight end position, it's just Zach Ertz and Ben Sinnott. I still love Ben Sinnott. He just has to wait his opportunity, just like Trey McBride did just 2 years ago. Moving forward with the Chicago Bears have been having a lot of troubles on the offensive side of the ball this offseason. The defense is playing spectacular, but the Bears offense is not. The Bears are mainly just starting Caleb Williams at the quarterback position, and you got Tyson Bagent. Tyson Bagent has been a great backup in the league, maybe one of the best backup quarterbacks that's available, and the Bears happen to have him. Hopefully that'll push Caleb Williams to actually play a little bit better. But Tyson Bagent, if you have him in super flex, you can drop him if you need to make that move. Case Keenum, as you know, he can be droppable. As a Vikings fan, we'll never forget the miracle in Minneapolis with Case Keenum. Thank you very much. At the running back position, you got DeAndre Swift, Roshan Johnson, Kyle Monangai, Travis Homer, and there's rumor that Jamal Williams may be added to this roster now that Roshan Johnson just can't seem to stay healthy. Roshan Johnson, I have dropped him in a league and I've traded him in another. Roshan Johnson is a guy that you can drop, even though this is a very thin depth chart at the running back position. They're already looking at picking up guys that are veterans, such as Jamal Williams. So he's a cuttable asset. Swift is a guy you want. Kyle Monangai, he's making a little bit of noise. Travis Homer is always that home run hitter, but you never know when that week is going to be. Travis Hunter can be droppable, but Jamal Williams, if he's on your rosters, if you are really desperate at the running back position and you don't want to make a trade, Jamal Williams is a guy to keep an eye on. Wide receivers are a lot more intriguing with the Chicago Bears because, again, there's hopes that the Chicago Bears are going to put things together and that the wide receivers are going to make a little bit more noise. DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Luther Vernon, all guys that you're keeping, of course. But a guy to also keep an eye on, especially in deep formats, is Olamide Zaccheaus. Zaccheaus has played as the wide receiver 3 for this team while Luther Burden was dealing with injury for most of the offseason. Olamide Zaccheaus has shown flashes in the NFL, and he is a very good wide receiver. He was right now slotted in for the slot role, which was Keenan Allen, who, again, had a lot of targets. There's a lot of targets that are open because of Keenan Allen stepping away from this offense. And look for Olamide Zaccheaus to start the season off earlier than Luther Burden III. And the tight end position, of course, there's Loveland and Kmet, but don't forget that Kmet is the seasoned veteran. Tight ends take time to groom. Kmet is probably the tight end that you want to start with, but as Loveland is still trying to get acclimated to the NFL. The Lions, Jared Goff is the only quarterback that you want. Gibbs and Montgomery are the only running backs that you want. You can drop all others, although I did like Jacob Saylors. Jacob Saylors, shout out the number 5 running back on the roster. Jacob Saylors was with the Battlehawks this offseason. He's undrafted with the Battlehawks for the UFL. He's been on that roster for a couple seasons in a row and has been one of the top scoring running backs in the UFL. The Detroit Lions have basically taken a chance, picked him up, and seen what he's going to have just this offseason. So Jacob Saylors, if there's an injury to one of these skilled backs, he's probably a guy that you want to be aware of. Okay. They do love Craig Reynolds. Craig Reynolds has been on this roster for what seems like half a decade. But I do like Jacob Saylors, and he has shown some flashes even in this first preseason game. Wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Williams, and and Tesla. Those are the 3 wide receivers that you want to hold on to. The Tim Patrick, great story. Wish he had an opportunity to stay healthy earlier on in his career, but just wasn't meant to be. Maybe he'll find himself in a championship game at some point, but his career is starting to wind down. Khalif Raymond has been a very skilled player, but he's just kind of showed flashes. You just never know when he's going to make that spark. Blake Taylor, gosh. Some of these guys, again, just you don't need to hold on to. Dominic Lovett, he was a rookie. Ronnie Bell, he was a guy that I've heard of, but drop. And the tight end, the only tight end that you want is Mr. Laporta. Continuing with the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers right now are in shambles. I just heard that Jordan Love has had a left thumb procedure done, but he is expected back by week 1. His left thumb not being his throwing thumb, but that being said, they've had plenty of injuries like Marshawn Lloyd can't seem to stay healthy. They put Christian Watson on IR or on the PUP, so he's not available. Savion Williams has been injured. Jaden Reed is currently injured. Romeo Dobbs is looking for a contract, has been injured. Wicks has been injured. The only guy that hasn't been injured for the wide receivers that I'm aware of is actually Golden. And the rookie has quite a bit of fantasy value at this time. But this is just a team that's really hard to trust overall. And personally, I think it's really hard to want to hold on to any of these players. And so if you can get good value in trades, feel free to trade any of these Packers players. Malik Willis is a name to know, as when Jordan Love was out just last year, he played admirably and definitely provided some fantasy upside because he's a running style quarterback. But Jordan Love already starting the season off rocky with a thumb procedure. I'm a bit concerned for these Packers. The running backs, basically all they have is Josh Jacobs, and the only other guy that I would really roster is Marshawn Lloyd. I am holding on to Israel Abanikanda in a league, but again, he is droppable as well. He just got added onto this roster from the 49ers. And Emmanuel Wilson, when he had opportunities last year, he was an okay fill-in player in really deep rosters. But if you need to make the cuts with Emmanuel Wilson, with Chris Brooks, with Israel Abanikanda, please make those drops. With the wide receivers, I mean, just throw a deck of cards out there and see what sticks to the wall outside of Golden. I thought Reed was going to be the guy last year, but even with all the injuries, they just never threw the ball to Jaden Reed. Dobbs, he was a cut candidate, a trade candidate, now an injured candidate. Wicks, everyone seems to be in love with Wicks, but I've never seen the appeal. Savion Williams, he's just a Swiss Army knife player that if he's going to have a breakout, it's going to be year 1, and then he's going to decline fairly rapidly as the league starts to figure out his play style. Mecole Hardman, he is just a special teams guy. Bo Melton isn't even a wide receiver anymore. He's starting to play cornerback, and the rest are all just drops. Tight ends, Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave. You know what? It's starting to get to a point where if you have to make a really deep cut, Musgrave, unfortunately, is a guy that is starting to be almost that cut candidate. He's a guy that's been on your roster for almost 3 years. Very athletic tight end. Takes time for tight ends to grow. But Tucker Kraft seems like he has just held on to this job. And whenever Luke Musgrave's had an opportunity, he's always seems to get injured. And just very unfortunate. It almost seems like Luke Musgrave needs to find himself a new home to have that fantasy appeal. But Luke Musgrave is unfortunately a cut candidate. And finally, my Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings. I thought we were going to be the bottom of the division, but after hearing all those injuries with the Packers, I think maybe we'll be third in the division. J.J. McCarthy, he is a quarterback with a lot of polarizing thoughts on. I am a lot less positive about J.J. McCarthy, as many other people seem to be just like hovering around him because he's a winner. And I really don't know what to believe. I don't see him throwing the ball as much as we'd like him to throw. And I think he's going to find himself into a lot of situations where we're going to take a step back as an organization and as a franchise and as a team. We overexceeded expectations just last year. And don't be surprised if the Vikings only win like 8 or 9 games. I like Sam Howell. He's a gunslinger. When he has an opportunity, he's just going to be throwing that ball around. But Sam Howell, even in super flex leagues, he's going to be a hard guy to hold on to as not Brett Rippon, but Max Brosmer has been actually getting a little bit more steam, the undrafted Minnesota quarterback. And he played very, very well in his first preseason action. Max Brosmer is a guy to know. And there's already speculation that Sam Howell had actually moved behind Brett Rippon in the lineup. And although in the first preseason game, Sam Howell was the second quarterback, then it was Rippon, and then finally it was Max Brosmer. So I'd like to see Max Brosmer have an opportunity to play a little bit earlier in the preseason games. I do like Sam Howell as a backup, and we'll just have to see what these quarterbacks do. But the only one that you really have to roster is still J.J. McCarthy, I suppose. The running backs, mainly just Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason. They have Ty Chandler listed at the number 3 spot, but I just read just today that Xavier Scott is actually pushing forward to the 3rd running back role. I don't know really much about Xavier Scott, so why don't we just take a look? He's an undrafted running back from 2023. College was Maine. He's age 26. If you look over to the right of the screen, you'll see that his speed score is in the 86th percentile, although his dominator rating is pretty low. But with running backs, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings have a great offensive line. If he's going to have opportunities and he's going to touch the ball, you want to at least see that they have a high speed score, so that way they have a higher likelihood for breakaway runs. The 6'1" frame means that he's probably more of an upright runner. So if there was an unfortunate injury to either Jordan Mason or to Aaron Jones, I would at least take a speculative ad with Xavier Scott. With the wide receivers, we found out just within the last week that Jordan Addison is going to serve a 3-game suspension, which leaves Justin Jefferson and not a whole lot else. Rondale Moore sounds like he's going to be lost for the season. During the first play, he looked like he had a significant knee injury, and he's going to be put on the IR. Jalen Naylor steps in from the wide receiver 3 position, and now he'll be pushed up to be wide receiver 2. I don't know if Jalen Naylor is anything special, but he is a wide receiver that the Vikings have been grooming for the last three years. And Ty Felton, he's that special teams player. There is a post on Twitter at FF Healers that you can check out that shows Ty Felton making a very great play on special teams as the gunner. He looked like he just shimmied off the defender and was able to get to the ball very quickly. At the tight end position, you have Hawkinson, who's been nicked up. It sounds like he's got about 3 different injuries, which includes like a groin injury of those 3. And then you've got Josh Oliver, who just had a contract. Gavin Bartholomew, I really like, but he's been injured all offseason. It sounds like they'll probably put him on the PUP or the IR spot, which leaves the other undrafted tight end, Benjamin Yurcik. He was a guy that I really liked pre-NFL draft, ends up being undrafted out of Georgia, 6'4", 245-pound frame, has a decent speed score and a very, very okay 40-yard dash in the 71st percentile with a 4.7. And so if there was an injury to Hawkinson where he wasn't able to play, I think it'd be interesting to see how Benjamin Yurcik and Josh Oliver end up playing. But Josh Oliver, he's probably a high-end handcuff tight end for this Minnesota offense that doesn't have a lot of receiving weapons. Okay, continuing to speed through here. We got about eight more teams to touch base on. The Atlanta Falcons. There was some big news recently that Darnell Mooney is week to week with a shoulder injury, and he may not be available early on in the season, which boosts up Ray McLeod from the wide receiver 3 to the wide receiver 2 spot. Ray McLeod at the end of the season, he was starting to show some flashes. And so if Ray McLeod is on your waivers, he's probably a guy you want to continue to hold on to. All these other wide receivers for Atlanta, you do not have to hold on to. Hodge is probably on your waiver wires. There was some hype for Casey Washington last year when he was coming out. We also remember who had been known as DJ Shark, who came out of retirement, that came to be added on to this roster. He may push up to that wide receiver 3 spot if Mooney's unavailable well before Washington or Hodge. And again, just look for him to be kind of that stretch guy. You'll never know when to play DJ Shark, better and best ball guy as he always has been. But all these other wide receivers you can drop, even Nick Nash, if you got him late in your rookie drafts, don't hesitate to drop him. And the tight ends, boy, it's a really, really tough situation here. But Kyle Pitts, he really needs to step up, or this team needs to move on. I like Joshua Simon, but there really hasn't been any news on Joshua Simon out of South Carolina, the undrafted rookie. But I thought that his play style was very similar to Kyle Pitts, and if Kyle Pitts was to move on, it will be because of Joshua Simon actually stepping up to the plate and being a better player for this roster. Carolina Panthers, yikes. Bryce Young, Andy Dalton. I've dropped Andy Dalton in a few of my Superflex leagues, especially after Bryce Young ended up kind of picking up steam there towards the end of the last year. Andy Dalton still has shown that he can sling the ball around. He's another year older, but don't be afraid to make cuts if you need to. With Andy, running backs, they're starting to get kind of a slew of running backs here. Hubbard, you obviously want. Rico Dowdle, he came off of a quiet 1,000-yard season with the Cowboys. I think those two are going to be the primary 2 running backs for this roster. Trevor Etienne, if you drafted him, just if there's a taxi spot, put him on the taxi. There still might be a little bit of hype for him that you could move him maybe or bundle him. But all the other running backs, you're probably either have them on the IR spot like Jonathan Brooks, and I'm not even sure what to do with him. Nobody seems to want him right now. Maybe this is the time to start to buy him on the cheap and just put him on your IR, especially if you've got that free spot. But Blackshear is not a guy that I want on my roster. In fact, I don't really want any of these wide receivers on my roster. Tedero McMillan, if you drafted him, you're obviously holding on to him. But Xavier Legette, drop. Adam Thielen, you can hold on to him, see if he has flashes like he did last year. But again, he's not a guy that's going to withstand any fantasy value, and you're probably not going to be able to get any value out of him. But if you have him, he's unfortunately a roster clogger, and it's really sad for me to say that, as I love Adam Thielen as a Minnesota Vikings fan. Jalen Coker, he's an interesting player, better and best ball type of wide receiver. Never know when to play him, but he's shown a lot of flashes last year as an undrafted rookie wide receiver. I think he's an interesting wide receiver, and out of all these wide receivers, I really like Coker, I think, the most out of the current roster. Jimmy Horn, there's been a little bit of hype on him. I'd be fine not having him on my roster. Hunter Renfrow, he's trying to make a comeback. He is not doing that. David Moore, he's droppable as well. The tight ends, the only tight end that you want here is Jatavian Sanders. Mitchell Evans, he was a rookie tight end, but didn't really do it for me. And Tommy Tremble, these guys are probably going to be splitting some tight end carries, but Ian Thomas isn't there anymore. So it just feels like Jatavian Sanders is going to be the main tight end weapon here. So if you got Tremble, cut. If you got Mitchell Evans, I'd cut him too. New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints have a quarterback carousel. You don't know which quarterback is going to be the flavor of the week, but it does sound like it's between Radler and Shuck. Those are 2 guys that you could just kind of hold on to and see what happens. If you have Radler, you're holding on to him in Superflex. If you got Show, you got him hopefully pretty cheap. I hope you didn't have to pay a second-round pick for him. In the spots I've had him, I was able to get him in either the late 3rd, 4th, or on waivers, or I just didn't get him. And you know what? Sometimes that's okay. The running backs, all you really want here is Kamara. You don't know who the running back 2 is going to be, but if you have Kendre Miller, I'll tell you what, right now he's listed as the number 2 running back, but he's been so injury prone, you just don't know what to do with him. The second I cut him, he'll be the number 1 running back. So look for me, if anything, to cut, trade, do whatever with if I absolutely have to, if I'm in a pinch. If I have him, I'm trying to hold on to him just to see what happens. Same with Devin Neal. There just hasn't been really any news about Miller or Neal. Even Cam Akers was added. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I mean, come on. We don't need him on your roster. Yarns, I think, is interesting. He's more of a receiving type of back. But, again, if you absolutely have to, like, you can cut Yarns. You can cut Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You can cut Cam Akers, okay? These are – and Velus Jones, come on, get out of here. Wide receivers, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. Those are the main two wide receivers to hold on to. I do have Brandon Cooks in a spot, and I've seen him dropped in a league, and I'm really debating on dropping him myself. He got in a fight earlier this preseason while with the Saints. I mean, it may show that he has still a little bit of fire left in his belly, but I don't really know what to think of. Do you really want to trust Brandon Cooks with these two really inadequate quarterbacks and Rattler and Show? I don't know. I might be wanting that problem to be somebody else's problem, and who knows, maybe someone will waste a lot of fab on Brandon Cooks, and that'll cook their fab money for the year. So that might be one of the things I'll do here in the next week or two when I have to make those tough cuts. But Brandon Cooks, I think, would be a tough cut. Cedric Wilson, not so much of a tough cut. Mason Tipton, I keep seeing his name brought up. He's not a guy that I'm rostering. If you have him, he's droppable. Same with Bub Means. Tight ends, Juwan Johnson, and nobody else. Foster Moreau, hopefully you've got an IR spot. You can hold on to him. But he is not going to be available all season long. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they have a slew of wide receivers. The wide receivers include Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Egbuka, even Jalen McMillan. Hold. Everyone else, feel free to drop. Even Sterling Shepard. He had some flashes last year, but it took the entire roster to be injured in order to actually play him. Tez Johnson, there was a lot of hype for him prior to the combine. You can drop Tez Johnson. I don't think he's going to make this roster. Trey Palmer, 2 years ago, he was playing the McMillan role at the wide receiver 3. He showed some flashes, but unfortunately, there's just too many wide receivers on this depth chart, and now he is a drop candidate. Running backs, Irving, White, Tucker, hold. Baker Mayfield, of course. And then they did add Teddy Two Gloves Bridgewater just last week, so I suspect that he'll actually be the quarterback 2 for this team. And if Baker was to go down, Bridgewater still shows that he has the skills to get the ball around, especially with this many receiving options. And then Kate Otten. And then, you know what? Payne Durham actually played pretty well there at the end of the year. But both guys, Otten, you hope maybe you can find somebody that has a lot more interest. I think there's a lot less targets to go around for him to be fantasy relevant. And Payne Durham, the only way he's going to be relevant is if Otten is actually injured. So if you have Durham from the end of last year, he can be cut as well. Got 4 more teams. Okay, now we're with the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals, you've got Murray, Jacoby Brissett. I've dropped him in a super flex league. Brissett always seems like he's kind of the cockroach that just sticks around. He has a fantasy floor, but he doesn't seem to have a fantasy ceiling. Clayton Tune, based on how terrible that he was playing last year, I'm really surprised he's still with this team. But I guess he knows the system, and so he's there as the quarterback 3, the emergency quarterback. Running backs, James Conner, Trey Benson. I think I've traded away all or the rest of my Trey Benson shares, but there is some speculation that Trey Benson's going to take a step forward. Michael Carter, he is a guy that I always like to just kind of watch on the back end of the waiver wire just to see, like, okay, is he showing any flashes or isn't he? Is he going to get moved? Is he going to make the team? At this point in time, he's still with the Arizona Cardinals. He didn't do anything with his first preseason game. DJ Dallas, he's a guy that was a former Seahawk. He didn't seem like he did much of anything at all. But another name to know, another name to watch is Zonovan Knight. And I really like the flashes that I saw out of him when he was with the Jets. I hope he has an opportunity somewhere, but I just don't think that that's going to be with the Cardinals. Wide receivers, Harrison. This is really tough because it's pretty much Harrison getting the targets, even though he's not really getting the targets because Trey McBride's there. And then you've got the pseudo wide receiver 2 in Michael Wilson. Tough cuts. Talk about tough cuts. I've had to cut Michael Wilson in a league, and it really was a little heart shattering for me because I really like Mike Wilson. I just don't think that they scheme him up very well with the Cardinals because they keep trying to give the opportunities more to like a Trey McBride and Harrison over Michael Wilson, who is a very good wide receiver, but seems to be a better NFL wide receiver than an actual fantasy football wide receiver as long as he's with the Cardinals. And so I think if you have to make that tough cut, Michael Wilson's also a cut candidate, along with Zay Jones, along with Greg Dulcich. And then the tight ends, they have Tip Raymond listed at the number 2 tight end. It's probably more like Elijah Higgins as the tight end 2 that you would want for this roster, but another name that just put a star by him. And again, if there is a Trey McBride injury, Higgins is a guy that you probably want to take a look at because they don't have a lot of wide receiver options, and they seem like they really like to throw the ball to the tight ends. The 49ers are in shambles. They have Brock Purdy, Mac Jones, former first-round pick. I think he's more than an adequate backup quarterback. I think he's got some upside to him. He played really well when he was with the Jaguars just last year when Trevor Lawrence was down. Brock Purdy, he just got the big contract, so he's going to have every opportunity. I thought early in the offseason, I thought Mac Jones would provide maybe a little bit more of a fight for the QB1 spot, but they seem to really love Brock Purdy, and they paid handily to Brock Purdy. So Brock Purdy will be the quarterback 1, but unfortunately, he's not going to have any receiving weapons. All of his receiving weapons are all injured. Ayuk is going to be starting on the IR. Jennings is currently injured and holding out on a contract. Ricky Pearsall, he had a hamstring. Now he sounds like he just came back. Demarcus Robinson, I believe he had some legal problems. He was injured. Jacob Cowing has been injured as well. And doesn't leave a whole lot of other options. They did bring in Russell Gage, and they brought in Equanimeous St. Brown within the last week or two. And they dropped, actually, Isaiah Nair, who I thought maybe he had a shot, but they must have told him early on that he wasn't going to make the roster. They allowed him to run free, and now he's with the Packers. And again, remember the Packers have a lot of injuries, so Isaiah Nair is probably one of those guys just to keep an eye on right now. I did drop the share that I had of him because I'm probably not going to be able to hold on to him when the drops are coming. So I went with a more upside player, not a guy that's just bouncing between maybe one practice squad to another. Tight ends, Kittle and nobody else. 2 more teams. We've got the Seattle Seahawks. They've also had their share of injuries. Sam Darnold is their quarterback 1. Drew Lock, Jalen Milroe. Milroe played pretty well in his first preseason action. Hopefully he'll have opportunities to play a little bit earlier on in the preseason games, so that way we can see like how competitive he is and how ready he may be. Kenneth Walker has been injured on and off this offseason. Zach Charbonnet, and then after this, the interesting part is it wasn't Damian Martinez that was in as the running back 3 in the preseason first game. It was actually George Holani, and George Holani, he looked very good. If you remember, Kenny McIntosh has been their running back 3 for the past couple seasons. Kenny McIntosh is on the IR. He's unavailable for the rest of the season. But Damian Martinez was a guy that they ended up getting I think was he a waiver wire guy? I think. Oh, no, he didn't quite make it to waivers. He was drafted in the 7th round, so he was drafted. I think it's really interesting that he has a Kendre Miller as his best comparable player. Speed scores are pretty high here for Damian Martinez. His 40-yarder was 4.5, but again, 217 pounds. It's a pretty good score out of Miami. But let's just take a look at George Holani. I don't really know much about him, but he was the backup player, the backup running back in Boise State behind Genty. And so he didn't have like the college dominator share, but why would you give him the bulk of the carries when you're right behind one of the best running backs in the league? I mean, we just saw Genty get drafted at number 6 overall in this year's NFL draft. And now you see George Holani, although aged 24.6, undrafted this year, he has good weight to him. He's 5'10", 208 pounds. That's very usable weight. That means he could play pretty much any down that you would like. He can run, again, at 4.5 speed, so kind of getting closer to the average speed. He's still 71st percentile and a 65% speed score. Burst score, meaning that he can get off the line quick. So he might be more of that slasher back. He was making plays. He really was. He really was eye-opening for me when I was watching him just this past weekend for the preseason game for the Seahawks. So a name to know, George Holani. Wide receivers, they have a lot of slot players, is what Colton would say. I've heard a lot of positive news on Cooper Kupp. JSN is playing really well. Torrey Horton, he had a good preseason game. MVS, he's that stretch guy. He'll catch a ball or two, maybe 3 in a game for 100 and some odd yards and a touchdown, but you never know what game that's going to be. MVS is more of that better in best ball guy. He would be a guy I'd still like to hold on to in best ball if I had him, but if I don't have him in best ball, not a guy that I want to hold on to, and not a guy that I'm really drafting anywhere. A roster clogger of sorts. If there's still somebody that somehow has their heart open for MVS or has some interest in the Seahawks offense, or if he breaks out here in the first game, sell. Torrey Horton, I really liked him as a wide receiver prospect. Hopefully you have a taxi spot for him. Ricky White, another fun rookie prospect, but again, probably more of a prospect. But if I had to make a cut, Ricky White, and I have cut him. I cut him a few weeks ago with Ricky White. But if I had a free taxi spot, I'd like to hold on to Ricky White if I can. Jake Bogbo, he seems like he's a guy that the Seahawks seem to like, but not a player that I want on my fantasy roster. The tight ends, it seems that they have Elijah Arroyo. He's listed as the tight end 1, but it's actually A.J. Barner, who's probably their tight end 1 to start with, the more seasoned tight end. And A.J. Barner did not play in the first preseason game, which means that he's probably more with the ones right now over Elijah Arroyo. They probably wanted to see what they have in the kid with Elijah Arroyo, but I think Elijah is going to probably split the tight end duties with A.J. Barner. And so if you're in a tight end premium league, if you're in a 2 tight end league, A.J. Barner is probably a guy that you want to at least see if he's on the waivers. Maybe you can get a cheap option there, because I think he's probably still going to have 50% of the play, or a 60-40 split between the two of them, and he could be a usable tight end down the stretch. And then finally, the Los Angeles Rams, the team that has maybe some of the most news coming out of camp, with Matthew Stafford having a disc herniation with his back. It first started off with Matthew Stafford having a back injury. Not really much was said, and then all of a sudden it's just developed into this big thing where he had to have an epidural injection for his disc herniation. Sounds like he's not going to be available for the rest of the preseason. Sounds like Jimmy Garoppolo is actually playing pretty well at the quarterback position. And, it was only a couple of years ago when Matthew Stafford had a really bad back injury and he was unavailable for most of the season. So Jimmy Garoppolo, he's had the connections with Devontae Adams, who is a new addition to this wide receiver core. They'll be interested to see, at that spot. I saw our guy, Colton Palmer, pick up Jimmy Garoppolo in one of the leagues in Superflex, and I think it was an excellent pickup. I wish I would have had a spot that was available so I could have picked him up. He's been a guy I've been eyeing for some time, but I just didn't have it for that roster build, and I think it was an excellent move. I'm really have some concerns here for Matthew Stafford going into this 2025 season, and hopefully he can get right. And we can really truly see what this offense has to bring. The running backs, Kyron Williams just got a big contract. Blake Corum sounds like he is still the RB2. He was playing ahead of Jarquez Hunter. And Jarquez Hunter, he is more of a slasher type of running back. He's got the speed compared to Kyron and to Blake Corum. But all three of them did play the Corum and Hunter played in the preseason game while Williams had sat out. Ryan Rivers, if you have him, you can drop him. Cody Schrader is a guy, he's kind of bounced around the league. He was a rookie running back last year. I like him as a depth option out of Missouri. And the one thing that is, I don't know, I think if I looked back at his profile, I think, it was his college dominator rating that kind of sparked my interest a bit more. And then he had a lot of targets. He was more of a pass catching back. College yards per carry was 5.9, so he's on the higher end. So 75% college dominator, college yards per carry was 70%, and 61 or 61st percentile for the college target share. So although his speed score does not show the upside, he's still a guy that I kind of want to see what he has in him. And finally, the wide receivers, the only two that you really want are Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. And I think Jordan Whittington is interesting. I have him in a couple leagues right now. I dropped him last year at the end of the year because I needed to make an emergency pickup to make a playoff push, and I'm holding on to him in another league. But he is on the fence of whether he's droppable or not. I definitely would rather have Jordan Whittington over Tutu Atwell and over any of these other wide receivers. But the biggest concern is what's Matthew Stafford's health going to be? And then the other part is the wide receiver 3 even usable? Because we've seen the Rams utilize the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and then their tight end, but we really haven't seen them utilize their wide receiver 3 spot. So if you have to make that tough cut, Jordan Whittington is the cut candidate. And at the tight end position, it sounds like Tyler Higbee is playing ahead of Terrence Ferguson right now, as we would expect. Higbee had a lot of targets when he came in at the end of the season last year, even going into the playoffs. Terrence Ferguson, he has had an injury earlier on this preseason, and sounds like he may not be available for the next week. But Terrence Ferguson is definitely a guy you want to stash onto. Colby Parkinson was a guy that was kind of on and off, whether he seemed like he had a game or two last year, but really wasn't that guy. So if even in tight end premium leagues, I'm fine cutting Colby Parkinson, even Davis Allen, who has been a guy that's been floated around as maybe the next tight end. But let's face it, the Winter Soldier is going to be that guy. Let me just see if there was any other news that I missed out on. Back with the 49ers with the running backs. Isaac Guerrero, he's been out a few weeks with a shoulder injury, and Jordan James has his season, is a Jordan James season, but not so fast. He's out with a finger fracture. He had surgery. The only running back that you really want there with the 49ers is going to be CMC. And then we talked about Kenny McIntosh and then Damian Martinez. So I think we hit on all of the news and notes and all of the NFC in regards to all the drops. We've already hit on the AFC just a couple of podcasts ago. I hope you enjoyed the Citizen Z intro for this podcast. I really thought it was kind of fun, kind of clever. That's from Z Nation. That's on Peacock. It's been really interesting to watch. And if you enjoy this podcast, please hit the like and subscribe button. And don't hesitate to reach out to both Colton and I. Our Twitter handles are @FFHealers and @FFCaptain22. And stay tuned. We're going to be bringing you more fantasy football news, notes, and I'm sure we're going to be getting a redraft mock draft coming up here soon with your boy Colton Palmer and me, Dustin Brown. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Sunday morning cold, eyes on the score, touchdown dance ball, craving for more. Friends are calling, trades are on fire. Rookies falling, championship desire. Fantasy football fever, chasing the dream. Top of the leaderboard, we're the winning team. Eyes on the score, touchdown dance ball, craving for more. Friends are calling, trades are on fire. Rookies falling, championship desire. Fantasy football fever, chasing the dream.